So this is the 750 hours GMT edition of the Khudilar television channel part A, being broadcast only on the internet on Sunday the 4th of June 2023. Now on the dirty digger Rupert Murdoch's scum on Sunday, it says, I want to be honest, which immediately raises the question, why now? She has been dishonest or other than honest for all those years she has been playing the audience, the zombies, for 14 years. While the serial liar Scofield has been lying on everything. Secondly, what is the assumption on which the dirty diggers come on Sunday basis? What is the evidence that she, Holly Willoughby, has got any intellect, any ethics, any morality, any sense of society? Who appointed her to be the symbol of this? Addressing what? What is she? This is a zombie society, complete zombie society that is being used, exploited by the dirty digger and the dirty diggers corrupt enterprise. Now, on page 2 of this Come on Sunday, there is this question in the heading: do Rishi texts show anti Boris plotting? Why should that question be put at all? Of course they do. But the point is that in none of these headings or contents is there any recognition of the existence of society. So, who gives a shit whether Sunak's particular texts are exposed as containing plots, evidence of plots against Johnson the liar? And there are miles and miles and miles of newsprint being abused by these liars, peddling the lies. Coffield's painful heart to heart over television career. This criminal is being treated as if he is the Pope, or he was the Pope until all these particular new evidence turned up. Tender moment, Phil broke news of sack to mum. Fuck them. What about lying for 30 years? I mean, it seems that the new religion, the dirty digger fosters, is the religion of anyone who tells lies and does so brazenly for decades and is rewarded with a degenerate version of the consecration. That they are given the platform as if they were the Pope or the clergy. I mean, what difference does it make whether Sunak, who is a stooge, is exposed as being engaged in any kind of plot against the congenital liar Boris Johnson, They're all liars. There is no platform, there is no stage, there is no opportunity anywhere morally, ethically, to examine these people's behavior. Now, moving on to the issue of the Epsom Derby, they say that there is danger in the protests against the Derby to horses. But of course, horses should never be used for the gratification of the lowest common denominator of humanity. These races must be stopped forever. That's the danger to the horses, not the protests. And this Scum on Sunday has got its version of the promotion for the actress turned director on Friends, Fame, and 5 a.m. Stars. I mean, she spoils it. This woman called Eva Longoria completely destroys any validity, any reference, by saying that this nasty individual called Posh is our best pal in Britain. And the picture of Posh with Eva Longoria on page 35 gives away the game. Nasty looks really nasty in that picture. And she also looks nasty in the other picture in the insert that is run in the same piece. So these are the people that are supposed to be the role models. How dare they? And there is a pair of nasty looking individuals on the cover of the Sunday Times magazine. Succession North Korea style. It says Kim Yo Young, the little sister ready to seize power. Now they have all forgotten about Mao Zedong and the millions that he murdered. So there is a rare feature on page 43 of the Sunday Times magazine, which has got the main topic on the head, on the top, a dog's life. Can cats and dogs ever be the best of furry friends? One study found that dogs and cats can understand each other and they respond accordingly. So there is a picture of a cat popping on the back of the dog, and there is a even better picture of a cat, because it is better because it has got the tail up in the sky. How they glorify the murderers. In the more than 1 year of the so called Russian attack or war on Ukraine, the so called Western media, publicity, propaganda, machines and operatives have perpetually, indefinitely, ceaselessly promoted the cause of war, never devoting one single week of their resources, their platforms to having no war, stopping wars. And there is no mention in any of these outfits, including the so called Guardian and the Observer, of even the existence of the United Nations. What was the United Nations allegedly founded for? What was the United Nations founded for? So that was 24th of October 1945, San Francisco, California, United States. The United Nations, referred to informally as the UN, is an intergovernmental organization whose stated purposes are to maintain international peace and security, develop friendly relations among nations, achieve international cooperation, and serve as a center for harmonizing the actions of nations. And the founders are listed as United States, India, United Kingdom, Brazil, France, and others. And the founding members of the United Nations, the Republic of China, that the date they joined, they signed, is 26th of June 1945. France, the same date. Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, that was the USSR. United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. United States of America, all of those are shown as having signed on the 26th of June 1945, but the dates on which they deposited the ratification vary. They're not the same dates. Then there is the mention of Argentina, Brazil, Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic, Chile, Cuba, Czechoslovakia, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Egypt, El Salvador, Haiti, Iran, Lebanon, Luxembourg, New Zealand, Nicaragua, Paraguay, Philippines, Commonwealth, Poland, Saudi Arabia, Syrian Arab Republic, Turkey, Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, Yugoslavia, Australia, Belgium, Bolivia, Canada, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Greece, Guatemala, Honduras, India, Iraq, Liberia, Mexico, Netherlands, Norway, Panama, Peru, Union of South Africa, Uruguay, Venezuela. There is no mention of Pakistan, although there could not be a mention of India, Bangladesh, because Bangladesh only came into existence on the 16th of December 1971. So Pakistan was in existence. It would be interesting to find out why Pakistan wasn't involved as the signatory initially on this 26th of June 1945. So let's go to the purpose of the United Nations. So it says founding of the United Nations, and it says a fresh start. This is an article. This article discusses how the end of WW2 brought about the founding of the United Nations with an ambition to save the next generations from war. So the first introduction is to save the next generation from war. So what do we find in the papers in Britain? There is only promotion of war. And the criminal rhetoric used by the criminal, Boris the Lying Johnson, is extraordinarily devoid of any relationship with the founding purpose of the United Nations. World War II, it says, I say the Second European War, was very different from World War I. Yet, in one respect, it prompted a similar response. A new world organization would be set up. The new organization was the United Nations Organization, or UN. Its founding document laid out an ambition to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. It is established on the basis of the UN Charter, an international treaty signed on the 26th of June 1945 at the end of a 2 month conference in San Francisco, which today binds 193 member states. This is differences and similarities. This is a piece not by the United Nations Organization but by outsiders, probably by the contributions from the University of Glasgow, which has got a online course on this. The circumstances of the United Nations establishment are as intriguing as those surrounding the creation of the League of Nations, but they are a story for another day and perhaps another course. So, this is related to the University of Glasgow in Scotland. For present purposes, what matters are differences and similarities between the two acts of creation. Three points seem particularly relevant. It says, number one, another new world organization. First, it was clear from the early stages of World War II that there would be another new world organization. Even before the attack on Pearl Harbor, the leaders of the United States and the United Kingdom agreed on the Atlantic Charter, a document that formulated guiding principles of their wartime effort, including the reunification. No, I'll read that again, including the renunciation of war and commitment to economic and humanitarian cooperation. These principles were adopted by all Allied powers, and as planning began for the post war order, it became clear that they would need to be integrated in some institutional framework, a framework that would not be a super state but a universal organization established by sovereign member states. In the Moscow Declaration of October 1943, the main Allied powers said as much when emphasizing the necessity of establishing at the earliest practicable date a general international organization based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all peace loving states and open to membership by all such states, large and small, for the maintenance of international peace and security. Indeed, as Northedge notes, when the victor powers began to recognize the world in 1945, I'll read that again. Indeed, as Northedge notes, when the victor powers began to reorganize the world, not recognize, reorganize the world in 1945, they had no doubt that something similar to the League of Nations must be formed again. This is attributed to the author Northedge, The League of Nations, page 278. At the same time, it was beyond doubt that the new framework would be formally separated from the old League of Nations, which is widely considered to have failed in its central purpose. What is more, two states leading the Allied coalition, the United States and the Soviet Union, had never been fully integrated into it, and thus could hardly be expected to argue for institutional continuity. The fresh start required a new framework, and old models had to be cast aside. Frank Morehouse's Edith trilogy, to which we have referred in the first week of this course, illustrates the point very well. It describes how high ranking legal officials traveled to San Francisco for the conference establishing the United Nations. Expecting to be called upon for advice, they find themselves ignored. Instead, a proper place amidst the great powers, one seat is allocated to them in the auditorium, away from the I don't understand, says Edith bitterly at the end of book 2. Dark Palace? How did we become the enemy? Yet, as with many fresh starts, there was more room for continuity below the surface. Once the United Nations took up its work, it did draw on the League's expertise and assets. It took over League property and buildings. It revived old League agencies in the social and economic sectors, and it ended up hiring many old League hands. Mazawar, governing the world, on page 213. And the second item is of the three, from wartime coalition to world organization. And the third one is the detailed planning controlled by major powers. Now, this is, of course, a course from the University of Glasgow, so we are not going to find the answer to the main question for which we shall go to this one. See if it contains, provides any different answer, information. What is the United Nations? Then, when was the United Nations formed? Why was the United Nations formed? Now, that is the likely section that might have the answer. The United Nations history began during the creation of the Atlantic. They represented the Atlantic Charter was a set of principles proposed by United States President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill that focused on maintaining peace and security among the members. Eventually, the representatives of 26 nations that pledged their support to the Atlantic Charter went on to form the United Nations. Key components of the Atlantic Charter became the foundation of the United Nations Charter. So why are they not talking about why the fuck was the United Nations formed? Why do they fucking keep repeating the rubbishy references? And they're talking about the bureaucracies. So you can see the deficiency even when I'm trying to get the answer to why the United Nations was founded, the main purpose. You get into the endless maze of rubbishy references miles away from the actual purpose of the United Nations. And therefore, there is no reference to the ongoing conflicts that are taking place across the world generally, and in particular in Europe now, between Russia and Ukraine. The main objectives of the United Nations are the maintenance of international peace and security, the promotion of well being of the peoples of the world, and international cooperation to these ends. Now, this is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan. So the UN says our work, United Nations, let's say, peace, dignity, and equality on a healthy planet. And it says under our work, the United Nations coordinates its work and the funds. Now, read that again. The United Nations coordinates its work with the funds, programs, specialized agencies, and other organizations of the UN system. So, where the fuck is the main purpose? Defined, you fucking morons. Now, it says what we do. And under what we do, it says maintain international peace and security, protect human rights, deliver humanitarian aid, support sustainable developments and climate action, and uphold international law. Now, as we are going through this, quite apart from the increasing fanatic, corrupt enterprise personified by the parasite who operates in the name of Ukraine. This parasite is trying to take over the NATO operations and become member of the military power that he thinks NATO represents. And he wants to deploy the military resources and power of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to engaging in the name of Ukraine in an aggravated war against Russia. So there is no reference to this parasite, and there is no examination of how he's been fucking up the maintenance of international peace and security. There is no reference to protecting human rights, and there is no reference to delivering humanitarian aid really. And there is most certainly no real support for sustainable development and climate action. And as to international law, it is very disputable. It is a matter of contention as to what is acceptable as international law. Because without clarification, without actual explanation, just a reference to law can be a law for the fascists. So the term law has to be qualified by making sure that it is not a facade for fascism, not a code for fascists. Now, in terms of protecting human rights, what is happening in Pakistan, for example? What is happening in Pakistan? In the last 48 hours, news about Pakistan has dominated the de facto takeover of the Pakistan institutions and bureaucracies by the Pakistan military. And there is absolutely no mention in any of the papers that can be seen in Britain to the outrageous, violent departure from all the purposes and stated aims of the United Nations by these elements that call themselves the Pakistan military. And it is speculated, the only thing that they have done in the Western media in the last 24 hours, they have speculated that Imran Khan will be tried by the military, and most possibly under the pretext of the trial, they will bring about the plot to murder him. And reference is made to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And yet, there is no reference in the actual news or commentary in the West to what is happening in Pakistan. And what is happening in Pakistan is very, very serious indeed. It's more serious internally than anything that is happening in Russia or in Ukraine or any other country. What is happening there is worse than what happened in Chile. And when the Chile fascists massacred people and murdered Salvador Allende. So, whatever the United Nations officially says, what we do, they are doing fuck all. And what you have got in the form of the completely criminal, careerist, opportunist parasite, the former Prime Minister of Portugal, who is now into his second term in the post of the Secretary General. It's beyond condemnation, beyond disgrace, beyond disgraceful. This criminal has been silent about what the dictators, the military in Pakistan have been up to. And as far as the references in the Indian English language outlets that I have seen, as far as the references to what is happening in Pakistan concerned, they are not talking contextually. The kind of reports being carried by the Indian or India based news outlets are second hand in terms of the actual engagement. The propaganda pieces that are written and carried via the Indian outlets are exactly that propaganda pieces. They are not independent pieces of journalism or reporting. Now, what the Indian media don't understand or what they are in denial of is that what the military in Pakistan are doing can very easily be replicated by their counterparts in the Republic of India with only a different kind of set of pretensions. But the main purpose can be the same. In fact, what is happening in India since what has been happening in India since Narendra Modi took over in 2014 is a kind of pre militarization of quote politics in India. There is no dissent really, there is no independent opinion, and the role of the Indian judiciary is more laughable than laughable. It's absolutely corrupt, totally stupid, and absolutely corrupt. Now, compare that, compare the role of the Indian or the judiciary in India with the decision in the last fortnight by the Pakistan Supreme Court that actually declared as illegal the particular arrest and attacks on Imran Khan. And you can see that compared with the Indian counterparts, the Pakistan court system is about 20%, no more than that, independent, more independent than the Indian counterparts. Whatever the actual exact differences or similarities between the two bureaucracies, judicial bureaucracies, in neither country, not in Pakistan, not in India, is the judiciary working to the level that it should be doing in terms of delivering independent adjudication of executive behavior. Now, what the Pakistan military has done in the last 48 hours appears to be from a source that is not founded on the Pakistan constitution, not derived from the Pakistan judiciary, and the parliament is, of course, de facto stooge parliament now. So, what the military is doing is unprecedented, unsourced, and unauthorized in an international, universal definition. Who are these military? Who gave them any authority to say anything about civilian politicians and civilian lives? The fact that thousands of the members of the Tehreek-e-Insaf, the justice movement that Imran Khan represents or fronts, leads, thousands of them have been put behind bars and thousands have been tortured already in the last fortnight, and other thousands have been coerced into submitting resignation letters and statements to the effect that they have left the Tehreek-e-Insaf. Now, this is a political demographic massacre of the Tehreek-e-Insaf by the military. So, the military, where do they come from? These are the questions that should have been raised in the papers published this Sunday today in the West, and there is no question. There is no question of these events, about these events, in the British papers nor in the French ones. The nearest to the British ones are, of course, the ones in France, and there is nothing, not that I can find. Let's check what is happening just to make sure that I'm not missing anything that has surfaced in the last few minutes. So the Guardian is saying in the last, let's say, 24 hours that Imran Khan's political games leave him isolated as Pakistan army destroys party. Who the fuck are these criminal shits at the Guardian calling it political games? This is not fucking political games, you fucking racist shits. This is the biggest democracy movement that Pakistan has witnessed in 76 years since the fucking British imperialists left the subcontinent. Now let's see if the BBC make any difference. How the Pakistani military feel about Imran Khan after protests. That is 9 hours ago, and we're talking at 08:36 hours GMT, just about midday, midnight. And this is by somebody called Farhat Javed, BBC Urdu, Islamabad. It started off as a regular Tuesday evening. Kamal, the wife of a Pakistani army officer stationed in a conflict zone, was chopping vegetables for dinner while her two young daughters watched television. But the military compound, arguably one of the safest places in Pakistan, was about to feel very unsafe. Kamal was surprised when her husband rang much earlier than usual. He told her to keep the doors locked because military quarters across the country were being attacked by supporters of former Prime Minister Imran Khan. In Lahore, the residence of a lieutenant general had already been set ablaze. If they could brazenly attack a general's house, will ours be next? The thought of it sent shivers down my spine, says Kamal, who doesn't want to use her real name. She immediately locked the doors and windows and put food in the storeroom in case they had to hide. She even thought about how to exit the apartment if it was set on fire. Could she jump out of the second floor window with her daughters? When I watched videos of the protests, it terrified me, Kamal says. I have never felt so insecure and vulnerable. But she was also torn. As a staunch Khan supporter, she felt let down. I and many others had supported Imran Khan, hoping for a change, but now I feel betrayed by the very person I had championed. His irresponsible and inflammatory rhetoric fueled the hatred and violence that has rocked this country, she says. Now, this is a fucking BBC Urdu service fucker delivering a pack of fucking lies. The protests were an unprecedented challenge to Pakistan's powerful military, who have ruled the country for several decades with three military coups since independence in 1947. Independence from who, you fucking liars? Although military rule officially ended in 2008, many believe that the army remains the kingmaker behind politicians. And Mr. Khan was widely believed to have their blessing. Even before his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf came to power in 2018, Khan was known as the military's darling. His critics say that he was portrayed by the army's social media teams as Pakistan's savior and the only leader who would stand up to dynastic politicians and a corrupt ruling elite. After Khan and the powerful military establishment fell out and he was ousted from power last year, the narrative was so deep rooted that it didn't change the minds of many in the army's ranks and files. Army Medical Officer Gul, who speaks on the condition of anonymity, is apolitical but now furious at Khan's supporters. So this is a propaganda piece from the Pakistan military, and the propaganda piece is aided and abetted by the BBC, who don't have any evidence that they have ever supported any democracy movement in Pakistan at all. Really. And this again goes back to the crusade. Pakistan is one of the demographically the largest populated parts of the world, the Muslim populations. Let's check the number of people in Pakistan now. After Indonesia, I think, Pakistan would be most likely the second largest Muslim population. So, what is this? This entry is saying so there are 96.5% are Muslim and 2.1% are Hindu, 1.3% are Christians, and 0.1% other. And the demonym is Pakistani. And the population is 249,566, 2049, sorry, 249 566,743. And it's the largest, 33rd largest country. So, where is the population, which is what I'm looking for? Muslim population status. So, there are spoken languages, over 77 spoken languages in Pakistan. Fuck Macaulay the shit. Thomas Babington fucking Macaulay. So the Pakistan is a middle power nation and has the world's sixth largest standing armed forces. It's a declared nuclear weapon state and is ranked amongst the emerging and growth leading economies with a large and rapidly growing middle class. Pakistan's political history since independence has been characterized by periods of significant economic and military growth as well as those of political and economic instability. It's an ethnically and linguistically diverse country with similarly diverse geography and wildlife. The country continues to face challenges, including poverty, illiteracy, corruption, and terrorism. Pakistan is a member of the United Nations, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the Commonwealth of Nations, the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, and the Islamic Military Counter-Terrorism Coalition, and is designated as a major non-NATO ally by the United States. So, what is happening in Pakistan? I'm just still looking for the location. Let's say I'll check in another way. The official religion of Pakistan is Islam, as enshrined by the Article 2 of the Constitution, and is practiced by approximately 96.47% of the country's population. The remaining less than 4% practice Hinduism, Christianity, Ahmadiyya Muslims, Sikhism, and other religions. Okay, so let's see what is this one saying. What is the rank of Pakistan in Muslim population? The Islamic Republic of Pakistan is the 33rd largest country in terms of areas and the fifth most populous with a population of over 210 million. No, as I suspected, it is the second one. Indonesia is the first one with 2,229 million, and Pakistan is 200 million Muslim, and India has got 195 million, and Bangladesh has got 153 million. So, the second largest Muslim country is being hijacked by a military that has no defined source. What is the source of its claims, any claims? And who is it accountable to, and who holds the military in Pakistan to account? And who decides that they can do anything they like to any civilian, political movement or party or personality? All these warrant urgent, immediate, today answers from the United Nations and other international bodies. We should be talking about all of those in due course later as well, not necessarily later in this particular part, but in later parts. Let's check about a few other items on the question of the COVID-19 WhatsApp standoff. Now, the standoff, as it says in the CTV news, so one day ago, let's check what's the update, latest version of the. This is one day ago. Johnson's WhatsApp text at heart of UK COVID inquiry. And it says, why are people in Britain talking about Boris Johnson's WhatsApp messages? And this is based on a piece by the Associated Press, the US news agency, and the writer Jill Lawless. Can you imagine the surname? Lawless. What a name. Published on the 2nd of June at 14:25 BST, which would be 13:25 GMT on 2nd of June. And in Dateline London, critics accuse the British administration of running government by WhatsApp because of the popularity of the messaging application with politicians and officials. Well, I don't use WhatsApp. I find it tedious and a complete diversion and a con. So it feels inevitable that a tussle over WhatsApp messages is at the heart of Britain's official inquiry into how the country handled the COVID-19 pandemic. Thousands of messages exchanged during the pandemic between then Prime Minister Boris Johnson and government ministers, aides, and officials form key evidence for the investigation chaired by the retired judge Heather Hallett. The Conservative government, now led by Rishi Sunak, wants to be able to edit the messages before handing them over, saying some are personal and irrelevant to the inquiry. It has filed a legal challenge against Hallett's order to surrender the unredacted messages. So it raises the question, what is the inquiry investigating? More than 200,000 people have died in Britain after testing positive for COVID-19, one of the highest tolls in Europe. Nearly quarter of a million people have been massacred. And the decisions of Johnson's government have been endlessly debated. Johnson agreed in late 2021 to hold an investigation after pressure from bereaved families. Hallett's inquiry is due to scrutinize the UK's preparedness for a pandemic, how the government responded, and whether the level of loss was inevitable or whether things could have been done better. Public hearings are scheduled to begin on June the 13th and last until 2026, with the former Prime Minister and a host of senior officials due to give evidence. By former Prime Minister, they mean the congenital liar Boris Johnson, because there have been so many former Prime Ministers still around. What's up with the WhatsApp? The Meta owned messaging service has become a favorite communication tool among UK government officials and the journalists who cover them. It's easy to use for both individual and group chats. Well, I disagree, but I'll have to read this for the purpose of quotation. And its end to end encryption offers users a sense of security that messages will be private. That confidence has sometimes proved misguided. Former Health Secretary Matt Hancock, who helped lead Britain's response to the virus, gave tens of thousands of his messages to a journalist who was helping him write a memoir. The journalist passed them to a newspaper, which splashed embarrassing details in a series of front page stories. They're talking about Isabella Oakeshott and her selling her soul and Matt's messages to the Telegraph Group. Hallett has asked to see messages exchanged between Johnson and more than 3 dozen scientists and officials over 2 years from early 2020. She also wants to see Johnson's notebooks and diaries from the same period. The government of Sunak, who took office after Johnson resigned amid scandals in mid 2022, well, they're skipping a reference to Liz Truss altogether, argues that some of the messages are unambiguously relevant to the COVID 19 inquiry. It says publishing them would be unwarranted intrusion into other aspects of the work of government and into the individual's legitimate expectations of privacy and protection of their personal information. On Thursday, the government's cabinet office filed court papers seeking to challenge Hallett's order for the documents. The next step will be a hearing at the High Court in coming weeks. Many lawyers think the government will lose the challenge. Under the terms of the inquiry agreed upon, the government at the outset, Hallett has the power to summon evidence and question witnesses under oath. The government has an uphill task. Jonathan Jones, a former head of the government legal service, wrote in a blog post for the Institute for Government. The likelihood is that the court will say the inquiry chair should be the one to decide how she goes about it and what material she needs to see for that purpose. What does Boris Johnson say? Johnson has a history of friction with successor Sunak, whose resignation from the government in July 2022 helped topple Johnson from power. Johnson has distanced himself from Sunak's government stance by saying Johnson, is happy to hand over his messages. On Friday, he said he has sent the WhatsApp messages directly to Hallett's inquiry. But in another twist, which is absolutely typical of Boris Johnson, the congenital liar, the depraved liar, the personification of evil, they cover only part of the requested period. Johnson has not passed on any messages from before April 2021. That period includes the early days of the pandemic, when the government made fateful and still contested decisions, as well as 3 periods of national lockdown and the dates of rule breaking parties in government buildings that led to scores of people, including Johnson, being fined by police. Johnson says the messages are on a phone he was ordered to stop using after journalists noticed that his number had been publicly available online for 15 years. Johnson says the security service told him to quit using the phone and never to turn it on again. He told Hallett on Friday that he had asked the Cabinet Office for assistance in turning it on securely so that I can search it for all relevant material. I propose to pass all such material directly to you, that is Heather Hallett. So there is the end of this piece from the American news agency Associated Press or AP. The other issue is that the Cabinet Office is, of course, a part of the government fronted by Rishi Sunak. What the Cabinet Office is doing is trying to restrict access to the various messages that include one communicator, Rishi Sunak, who was in Boris Johnson's government at the time. And it is Sunak's statements and positions that the Cabinet Office is trying to protect from scrutiny. But as the observers have said, if the government itself has appointed Heather Hallett as the chair of the inquiry, then how is it that it is going to take that same chair or the same inquiry to the court? It contradicts itself. And this is typical of the corruption that bedevils and dominates the British government, the British Parliament, the British media. And this will be continuing. As the former French ambassador to the United Kingdom observed, what did she say? Let's remind ourselves what she said. The entries that appear online in response to this search statement, and the statement is, of course, Boris Johnson is a congenital liar, are all uniformly condemnatory of Boris Johnson. And it says Boris Johnson is a pathological liar. That is Isabel Oakeshott. And this is 5th of July 2022. Boris Johnson, pathological liar, revolting. That is YouTube from Hattrick on the 9th of January 2017. Dominic Grieve, Boris Johnson is a pathological liar. That is 11th of January 2022. Boris Johnson is a pathological liar. Isabel Oakeshott, Facebook, Talk TV UK, 5th of July 2022. Compulsive liar, backlash grows after footage shows Boris Johnson made misleading comments on inflation. Boris Johnson is facing growing anger after being accused of lying multiple times during Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday as he was grilled on the growing cost of living crisis. Now, this one is dated the 6th of January 2022, and this is from Yahoo News UK, and his byline to Nadine: Bachelor Hunt. A completely shameless criminal. Now, the French ambassador Sylvie Barman said in a piece published on the 27th of February 2021 by the Times. Sylvie Barman, yes, Boris is a congenital liar and your country has scuttled itself. Now, Sylvie Barman, even before she retired as the French ambassador to the United Kingdom in 2017, I think, she was regularly featured in the new SS. I call it new SS to relate it to the fascistic culture operated by the outlet called the New Statesman. And the two S's are inclusive of the reference to the brief period when this title was called New Statesman and Society, reflecting the assumption of the title of the then defunct society. But to me, the New Statesman is grotesquely unattractive in terms of a read and grotesquely corrupt in terms of any relevance, any relationship with universal culture and values. It is like reading the textual version of a Gordon Brown. The pretense is there, but it's totally repulsive. But essentially, Sylvie Berman made herself very regularly noticed as an opponent of the Brexit campaign that was ongoing while she was in post in the court of St. James's, as it is called. And everything that she said about Boris Johnson in terms of his dishonesty and corruption has been echoed by the observations by other people who have made similarly consistently fact based observations about Boris Johnson. The question for me is, how is it a criminal like that is not yet prosecuted? 18 years ago, I think I started publicly writing about the criminal Boris Johnson. And one of the platforms that I used was the student outlet in Oxford, Sharwell. One of the ones, anyway, in which I began to denounce Johnson as a liar. Now, even if they take the 18 years length of my evidence, there should be no doubt at all under the existing definitional criteria of English law, criminal law, that Johnson is overdue for prosecution as a criminal on at least a dozen separate counts. So it's the timidity of the media, for example. This whole British media, including the so called Guardian, is still behaving timidly and is choosing not to publish the evidence that it has about the daily lies and lying by the criminal Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson is a thug, a criminal, a liar, and a crook. There is no comparable example of a criminal, another criminal, being excused, prosecution. So, what is the mystery? It is very similar to the mystery as to why bands of thugs claiming to be the Pakistan protectors can threaten the lives of peaceful and pro democracy campaigners in Pakistan and target Imran Khan, who is leading the campaigners, and torture and harass. And probably there have been any number of murders of protesters in Pakistan in the last, let's say, 6 months. What is happening in Pakistan is unprecedented because the kind of movement that Imran Khan has begun with the large rallies held right across the Pakistani Punjab and in other parts of the country, in other provinces, there has been no such large scale public rallies for political democracy and accountability in Pakistan in the 76 years of this country's history. And to any Democrat, to any international observer of democracy movement, what has been happening under the leadership of Imran Khan should be, on 95% of the cases, welcomed. The consistency with which Imran Khan has advocated a very simple series of demands and aims, the consistency has been unprecedented, not seen in the politics of anyone before, even not during the formative periods, which were very accompanied by excitement across Pakistan. The formative period of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's Pakistan's People Party, Pakistan People's Party, and the contents of the Hakiki Azadi program that articulated far exceed the contents of anything the so-called Islamic party, the Jamaat Islami, has ever been successful in advocating and articulating and presenting to the people of Pakistan. So, despite the fact that I am dissatisfied with Imran Khan's failure to apologize for the military's rapes and murders and massacres of innocent civilians in 1971 in East Pakistan, I still approve of what I have said, approvingly, of his contribution for the establishment of democracy and Hakiki Azadi in Pakistan. We shall be continuing updating on all of those, and for the time being, we shall end after briefly checking on what is happening in Tower Hamlets. Evening, No Standard website headed Asylum Seekers Left to Sleep on Street in Whitechapel. Now, this is a piece in contrast with the boasts by the liar, the so-called executive Mayor Luthraman, that he is following the example set by the great man, as he called the lying Ken Lyings to Livingston. There is no evidence of Luthraman saying anything, doing anything to support the people who are in need of housing, who are homeless, who are without shelters. And the so called left, the white left racist morons, the shaitans that support the corrupt regime fronted by Luthuraman, these have no connection with the truth, the reality of the desperation being experienced by people denied housing in Tower Hamlets and by Tower Hamlets Council. So we shall be devoting updated evidential length of pieces to this situation. And let's see the other one where Lutheraman has stolen, shamelessly stolen, the phrase, "I'm not a monster," that Shamima Begum was ascribed about a month ago. I'm not a monster, the naughty story of Shamima Begum, naughty meaning KNOTTY, that is tangled up. So there is no update on the Shamima Begum. And there is no reference to Shamima Begum by the Timeless Council website. So we shall be talking about all of those in due course. So this is 1 hour and 30 minutes, ending at 09:20 hours GMT on Sunday, the 4th of June 2020.